Strong women might last 2 years. The weak measured survival in months. Children born underground rarely saw first birthdays. But the mine consumed all eventually through cave-ins, toxic exposure, exhaustion, despair, or simple mathematics of calories versus labor. Some tunnels collapsed with workers inside. No rescue attempts, cheaper to dig new shafts than extract bodies. Women died entombed, chained to others, in darkness so complete it had weight. Archaeological excavations occasionally find these group graves. Skeletons still linked, still in laboring positions, still waiting for rescue that never came. The rare survivors emerged transformed. Sunlight blindness from years underground, skeletal frames from malnutrition, minds broken from isolation despite constant company, lead poisoning symptoms, tooth loss, tremors, madness. These walking corpses served as warnings more effective than any brand or scar. Purpose accomplished. Rome didn't send women to mines expecting reformed workers. Mines were deletion mechanisms, erasing problematic property while extracting final value. Every ore cart raised represented human life compressed into commodity. The empire built on foundations of stolen labor and stolen lives. But perhaps the cruelest part wasn't the physical punishment. It was what Rome did to their children. The 6-year-old traced her mother's forehead scars with tiny fingers, not understanding why other children ran away. Children born to branded women entered the world pre-marked. Not physically, Roman efficiency didn't waste brands on those who might die young, but social marking began at birth. The child of a fugitiva carried invisible chains from first breath. Legal status transmitted automatically. Partus sequitur ventrum offspring follows the belly. A branded mother meant enslaved child, regardless of father's status. Free men who impregnated enslaved women created more slaves. The arithmetic of reproduction became another tool of control. These children grew up reading their futures in their mother's scars. FEG across a forehead translated to lifetime servitude for offspring. Every glance at mother's face reminded children of inherited position. Some mothers tried hiding brands with hair arrangements or veils. Children always knew what lay beneath. Social dynamics punished innocence. Free children learned early to avoid the branded woman's daughter. Playground segregation happened naturally. Who wanted to associate with marked families? Even among enslaved communities, hierarchies existed. Children of branded women ranked lowest, tainted by maternal defiance. The law was clear. Children inherited their mother's status and her shame. Roman jurisprudence addressed edge cases with typical thoroughness. Children conceived before branding but born after? Enslaved. Children fathered by owners on branded women? Enslaved. Children of women who died from branding infections? Enslaved and orphaned. Every scenario calculated to maximize property retention. Education meant learning inferiority. While citizen children studied rhetoric and mathematics, branded women's offspring received instruction in subservience. Boys learned physical labor. Girls discovered they'd inherited their mother's vulnerabilities plus additional shame. Knowledge meant understanding exactly how trapped they were. Puberty brought fresh horrors. Young women realized why their mothers had risked everything to escape. The same forces that drove maternal flight now focused on daughters. But these girls bore additional burden. Their mothers' brands marked them as coming from rebellious stock. Owners watched them closer, punished harder, suspected constantly. At age 7, she was sold to a different household. Separation served multiple functions. It punished mothers by removing children. It prevented bond formation that might encourage joint escape attempts. It reminded everyone that enslaved families existed at owner convenience. And it distributed rebellious blood spread across multiple households rather than concentrated in one. Children sold away from branded mothers faced particular challenges. New households knew their origins, treated them as potential flight risks from arrival. Preemptive punishments, reduced rations, increased surveillance, prophylactic beatings aimed to crush inherited defiance before it manifested. Some children never knew their mothers' stories. Sold as infants, raised elsewhere, they grew up sensing difference without understanding source. Until the day someone mentioned their origins, your mother was a runner, branded, probably dead by now. identity revealed through casual cruelty. The psychological damage compounded across generations. Branded women raised children, knowing they'd passed on condemnation. Children grew up seeing freedom's price written on maternal flesh. Grandchildren inherited trauma without context, fear of running bread into bones before they understood why. Her mother's brand had marked them both, in different ways. Physical marking versus psychological scarring. Mothers bore letters on flesh. Children carried invisible wounds, hypervigilance, learned helplessness, inherited terror. Both permanent. Both designed to perpetuate control across generations. Records mention branded women's children primarily through sales documents. Property transfers noting offspring of fugitive commanded lower prices. Damaged goods. Buyers understood risks, genetic predisposition toward escape, learned defiance, potential revenge seeking. The market priced accordingly. Some children chose different paths, became model slaves, ultra-compliant, desperate to distance themselves from maternal shame. Others internalized the rebellion, planning their own escapes while still young. A few managed to purchase freedom, spending lifetimes accumulating peculium to buy what birthright should have granted. But freedom came with asterisks. Former slaves bore stigma. Children of branded women carried double marks. Legal freedom didn't erase social knowledge. These liberty found themselves excluded from trade guilds, religious positions, social advancement. The brand followed across generations, visible or not. And yet, knowing all these consequences, women kept trying to escape. The reason why reveals Rome's darkest truth. The physician's records were clinical. Multiple injuries consistent with repeated trauma. But numbers couldn't capture why death seemed preferable. Roman law regarding enslaved women created perfect conditions for abuse. Owners possessed absolute dominionius vitae nescisc, power of life and death. But between those extremes lay infinite gradations of permissible horror. The law protected property rights, not property itself. Sexual violence permeated the system, not as aberration but as structure. Enslaved women existed partially for reproduction, creating more slaves, and partially for owner gratification. Consent wasn't a concept. Refusal meant punishment. Submission meant survival sometimes. The documentation speaks in silences. The state inventories list enslaved women by age, appearance, and reproductive capacity. Young women valued higher. Beauty noted as asset. Virgin status affected pricing. The commodification of female bodies into categories, revealing expected uses. Medical texts describe treating injuries with detached professionalism. Torn tissue from violent penetration. Pregnancy complications from two young mothers. Infection patterns suggesting repeated assault. Physicians treated symptoms while ignoring causes healing property for continued use. The law didn't just permit abuse, it protected it. Legal frameworks explicitly denied enslaved women personhood. Rape required victim citizenship. Enslaved women couldn't be raped legally. Objects can't consent or refuse. Owners faced no restrictions on sexual use of property. Lending enslaved women to friends was hospitality. Forcing them into prostitution was business. Children resulted from systematic assault. Partus sequitur ventrum ensured offspring became additional property. Owners impregnating enslaved women increased holdings without purchase costs. Some estates operated as breeding facilities. Young women cycled through pregnancies until bodies failed. But beyond sexual violence lay broader permission for any cruelty imagination could devise. Enslaved women couldn't testify against owners. No legal recourse existed for brutality. The only protection came from owner self-interest in preserving property value. Sometimes that wasn't enough. When her young daughter reached the same age she'd been when, patterns repeated across generations. Mothers watched daughters approach ages when they'd first experienced violation. Knowledge of coming horror without ability to prevent it. Some women killed their daughters as mercy. Others ran, desperate to spare children their own fates. Escape attempts often coincided with specific triggers: a daughter's first menstruation, a son reaching saleable age, owner's death meaning uncertain transfer to unknown cruelties, or simply accumulation of daily horrors exceeding human endurance. The calculus was stark. Stay and endure certain degradation. Watch children suffer identically. Run and risk branding, flogging, arena death, but maybe, possibly, reach free territory. Death as escape seemed rational when living meant continuous violation. That night, she made a decision that would cost everything. Planning happened in fragments. Kitchen knives hidden, food cached, directions to rumored maroon communities memorized. Everything risked on geography half remembered from overheard conversations. Freedom existed somewhere beyond Roman reach. Had to. The system recognized this desperation. That's why punishments escalated so dramatically. Not just to reclaim property, but to make escape attempts unthinkable. To ensure the daily horror of enslaved existence never exceeded fear of consequences. To calibrate suffering precisely below rebellion threshold. Women who ran knew the stakes. They'd seen branded faces, watched arena executions, heard stories of the mines. Yet they ran anyway. That choice illuminates the unbearable nature of what they fled. When certain death seems preferable to continued existence, existence has become torture. Roman sources occasionally acknowledge this reality obliquely. Seneca notes enslaved women choosing suicide over submission. Pliny mentions estates where female slaves required constant surveillance to prevent self-harm. The elder Cato recommended selling enslaved women before they became troublesome code for desperate enough to risk anything. Some Romans saw this system's evil. One senator wrote words that would haunt the empire. But his recognition changed nothing. They are slaves? No, they are human beings. Seneca wrote these words, then walked past the branded woman at his gate. Lucius Annaeus Seneca, Nero's tutor and Rome's most celebrated Stoic philosopher, articulated what many Romans understood but few acknowledged. His letters contain remarkable passages recognizing enslaved humanity. Yet he owned hundreds of human beings, profited from their labor, participated fully in the system he philosophically questioned. His writings reveal the paradox. Treat your slave with kindness, he advises. Remember that fortune could reverse your positions. Beautiful sentiment. But kindness within slavery still assumes ownership of humans. His mercy operated within boundaries that accepted fundamental evil. Seneca's household included branded women. Estate records indicate multiple fugitivi among his properties. While he wrote about universal human dignity, these women served his guests wearing their crimes on their faces. The philosopher who proclaimed human equality never freed the marked women who embodied his system's cruelty. He wrote beautiful words about humanity in the morning, then attended dinner parties served by branded women. The cognitive dissonance appears throughout elite Roman writing. Cicero discusses natural law while owning people. Marcus Aurelius contemplates universal brotherhood between inspecting slave purchases. Pliny the Younger describes treating slaves humanely while casually mentioning beating disobedient ones. But Seneca's case particularly illuminates Roman moral blindness. His Stoicism taught that virtue was the only good, that external circumstances couldn't affect the wise man's happiness. Convenient philosophy for those whose external circumstances included owning others. His letters contain detailed advice on slave management. Select carefully. Treat fairly within limits. Don't be cruel unnecessarily. But manumission? Rare. Questioning the institution itself? Never. His reforms operated entirely within slavery's framework, making it bearable rather than questioning its existence. Even as he penned philosophy, the screams from the forum reached his window. Seneca lived near enough to hear public punishments. His study overlooked streets where branded women passed daily. He witnessed the human cost of Rome's system while writing about cosmic justice and natural dignity. The screams provided soundtrack to his philosophical compositions. Other Roman writers showed similar awareness. Petronius satirized masters who branded slaves for trivial offenses. Juvenal mocked women who had servants flogged for imperfect hairstyling. Martial wrote epigrams about scarred slaves. Recognition everywhere, action nowhere. The paradox extended beyond individuals. Roman law included provisions suggesting enslaved humanity peculium rights, limited protections against extreme cruelty, manumission possibilities. But these recognitions reinforced, rather than challenged, the system. Partial humanity meant continued ownership. The senator's own household contained 3 branded women. One prepared his morning meal. Another maintained his philosophical library. A third served at symposiums where he discussed Stoic ethics with fellow elites. Their branded faces provided visual counterpoint to abstract discussions of human dignity. Seneca wrote specifically about anger, declaring it contrary to nature and reason. Yet, he lived in a society structured on violence against the enslaved. He counseled emotional control while benefiting from a system maintained through terror. His tranquility rested on others' suffering. The philosophical schools offered no real challenge. Stoics preached acceptance of fate convenient when your fate was owning rather than being owned. Epicureans sought pleasure while served by the miserable. Even cynics, who rejected property, didn't reject slavery itself. When Nero ordered Seneca's suicide, the philosopher faced death with celebrated courage. His final hours became legend, calm acceptance, philosophical discourse maintained until the end. The branded women in his household received no mention in accounts of his death. Their fates, unremarkable. His writings survived, inspiring centuries of moral philosophy. His participation in evil, forgotten or excused. Biographers emphasize his wisdom, while minimizing his slave ownership. The branded women who served him vanished from history, except as property transferred to heirs. Which brings us back to that morning in the forum, to the woman whose screams started this story. Because her fate represents the system's ultimate truth. Every tool, every law, every punishment, they weren't random cruelties. They were blueprints for terror. Rome didn't stumble into systematic brutality. The machinery of oppression developed through deliberate refinement across centuries. Each element branding, chaining, flogging, arena execution, mine condemnation, interconnected to create comprehensive control architecture. Consider the progression. First escape attempt earned branding. Visible marking enabled immediate identification, community enforcement, and psychological warfare. Second attempt brought escalated physical punishment, flogging, or gate chaining. Public torture reminded witnesses of consequences while damaging but not destroying property. Third attempts triggered economic calculation. Young, strong women might face arena execution, spectacular death, providing entertainment value. Older or weaker ones went to mines, extracting final profit from failing assets. Every decision balanced terror production against property preservation. The infrastructure required massive investment, specialized tools, trained personnel, dedicated spaces. Every Roman town included punishment facilities. Traveling magistrates carried portable branding equipment. Arena architects designed beast gates and victim elevators. Mine operators developed processing systems for human disposal. From the moment of capture, each step was choreographed. Vigiles' patrol patterns anticipated escape routes. Holding facilities sorted prisoners by offense severity. Magistrates followed sentencing guidelines ensuring consistent punishment. Executioners trained in specific techniques. Nothing left to improvisation or mercy. Documentation systems tracked everything. Branded individuals registered in municipal records. Mine transfers recorded like shipping manifests. Arena deaths tallied for administrative reports. The bureaucracy of suffering matched Rome's famous efficiency in aqueduct construction or military logistics. Legal frameworks provided intellectual architecture. The 12 Tables established property rights over persons. Subsequent legislation refined rather than reformed. Jurisconsults debated edge cases. Could branded slaves testify if the crime involved their branding? Technical questions, avoiding moral ones. The normalization happened through repetition and cultural production. Plautus made comedy from human suffering. Artists decorated villas with scenes of mythological punishments. Children's education included attending public executions. Horror became background noise of daily life. The brandings, the chains, the arena, all parts of one machine. Each component reinforced others. Branding created visible outcasts. Social death encouraged further escape attempts. Escalating punishments provided public spectacles. Spectacles normalized violence. Normalized violence enabled the system's continuation. Economic incentives aligned perfectly. Slave traders profited from initial sales. Owners extracted labor until escape attempts. Punishment industries, tool makers, arena operators, mine owners profited from failure. Even failed escape attempts generated value through terror production. The system recognized and countered human resilience. Women survived branding, flogging, endured flogging, try prolonged chaining, survived arena sentences, send to mines. At each level, calculate maximum suffering against profitable survival, push boundaries of endurance while maintaining examples. They had thought of everything, prepared for every contingency. Seasonal variations addressed different needs. Summer entertainments required arena victims. Winter building projects needed mine labor. Agricultural peaks demanded field workers moderate punishments preserving functionality. Urban festivals called for spectacular executions. Supply matched demand. Psychological warfare accompanied physical terror. Force enslaved populations to witness punishments. Make families complicit through proximity. Create hierarchies where some enslaved persons administered punishments to others. Fracture solidarity through graduated suffering. The genius lay in making alternatives unthinkable, not just through punishment fear, but through elimination of escape possibilities. Where could branded women run? Every Roman settlement would recognize marks, return property. Beyond Roman borders meant barbarian territories, different dangers. Even successful escape meant lifelong fugitive status, no legal existence, no legitimate employment, constant fear of recapture, children born free but raised in hiding. The system extended consequences beyond physical boundaries, making freedom itself a form of punishment. Modern archaeological evidence confirms literary accounts. Excavated villas reveal punishment equipment. Skeleton analysis shows healing patterns consistent with described tortures. Mine sites contain mass graves of chained remains. Physical evidence supporting textual horrors. And now we return to where we began to understand why that particular morning's branding would echo through centuries. The iron lifts from her forehead. Blood runs into her eyes, mixing with tears she couldn't prevent. The letters FVG smoke against dark skin, already swelling, soon to scar. The crowd begins dispersing, market day continues, life flows around her kneeling form. But this woman has a name. Claudia, age 19. Born on a Campanian estate, sold to Rome at 14. 5 years of service to Marcus Juventius, grain merchant. 5 years of his son's attention after dark. 5 years watching other women disappear into private rooms and emerge broken. Her escape lasted 3 days. She made it past the city walls, following the Via Appia toward Brundisium, slept in olive groves, stole bread from unguarded ovens, dreamed of reaching the port, finding passage anywhere beyond Rome's reach. Even shipboard slavery seemed preferable to Juventius's hands. The Vigiles caught her at Tres Tabernae. Professional efficiency chains ready, no excessive violence, just another fugitive among dozens captured weekly. The return to Rome passed in silence, broken only by iron links, rattling against stone roads. Now she rises from the platform, legs unsteady, vision blurred. Juventius waits with rope and calculating eyes. Not angry FEG women sell for less, but damaged property still holds value. His son watches from the crowd's edge, already planning evening visits. Nothing has changed except the letters marking her forehead. The walk back to Juventius's villa takes 20 minutes. Through the Subura's crowded streets, past the Capitoline temples, into the wealthy residential quarter. People notice her fresh brand, some with pity, most with indifference. Just another marked woman among thousands in the eternal city. At the villa, she returns to grain sorting. Other slaves avoid her eyes, not from cruelty, but from recognition. There, but for fortune. The brand weeps lymph and blood while she measures wheat. Tomorrow she'll serve dinner to Juventius's guests, her forehead a conversation piece between courses. But here's what Rome never calculated. Claudia's branding became inspiration rather than warning. That night, 2 other enslaved women in Juventius's household begin planning. They've seen the price of failure. They choose to risk it anyway. Because Claudia's brand tells two stories: Rome's power to punish and human refusal to accept unendurable existence. Multiply Claudia by thousands, tens of thousands. Women whose names vanished but whose suffering built an empire. Each brand, each flogging, each arena death represented individual human beings choosing possible death over certain degradation. The scale defies comprehension, but remembering their humanity demands we try. Today, archaeologists uncover their remains. A skeleton in Spain shows characteristic forehead scarring, FVG, etched into bone. Mine excavations reveal mass graves, women and children still chained together. Arena substructures contain processed human remains, victims reduced to archaeological fragments. These bones tell stories, law codes, and literature obscured. Each skeleton was Claudia. Each had a name forgotten, a story erased, a humanity denied. But the physical evidence endures. Calcium and phosphorus preserving what Rome tried to delete, proof that these were people, not property. The Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years. Its legal systems influenced Western civilization. Its architecture still stands. Its literature fills libraries. But beneath marble and rhetoric lie millions of Claudias. Women who built Rome through forced labor, who died for entertainment, who suffered to maintain systems of control that echo through centuries. When we admire Roman accomplishments, we stand on their bones. Every aqueduct, every villa, every monument represents extracted labor and destroyed lives. The Colosseum hosted their executions. The Forum witnessed their brandings. The mines swallowed them whole. Beauty built on brutality, civilization constructed through systematic dehumanization. Claudia survived her branding. Juventius's records indicate she lived another decade, bore 3 children, died during complications with a 4th. Her children inherited her status but not her brand. They grew up seeing their mother's mark, understanding its meaning, carrying invisible scars. History forgot Claudia's name. This story restored it through imagination, because someone must. Behind every statistic hide human beings. Behind every Roman glory lurk untold horrors. Behind every branded forehead existed a person who deserved better than becoming property, punishment, spectacle, or archaeological fragment. Remember Claudia. Remember them all. Remember that civilization and barbarity intertwine, that human beings created these horrors and others endured them. Remember that the past echoes in the present, demanding we recognize humanity wherever power tries to erase it. The brand FVG meant fugitiva, but it also meant someone who refused to accept the unacceptable. In trying to erase these women, Rome inadvertently marked them as human beings who chose possible freedom over certain slavery. That choice honors them still.